And now I will pass it over to Jean for the introduction of our speakers today.
Okay. Thank you, Yulia. All right, so before I introduce today's speakers individually, I just want to take a moment to say how genuinely special this is for me personally. I've known both of these women for over 25 years, and they're not just colleagues, they're really dear friends of mine. I met Krista when she was a graduate student here at ASU, and I was teaching. She actually used my classes for part of her research. I can't remember, was that your dissertation or maybe it was just a project? I don't know.
Your dissertation, yeah.
Yeah. And I met Kim later that same year while working on preparing tomorrow's teachers to use technology, a PT3 grant, if anybody remembers those. And since then, the three of us have taught together, published together, presented together, traveled together, and even grown our families together. Plus, we've found ways to continue our work, working together through consulting. Kim worked here in engineering at ASU with CBBG, where I was before here at the LTH. And we had Krista come and train faculty and students on problem-based learning. That was fun with CBBG and CB. So having them both here today for an event at ASU where the place where it all started really means a great deal. So I know you're going to learn as much from them as I always do. So first, Dr. Krista Glazewski is the Executive Director of the William and Ida Friday Institute for Educational Innovation and Associate Dean for Translational Research in the College of Education at North Carolina State University. Her research explores how teachers adopt and adapt new practices to support complex collaborative problem solving, integrating both foundational and emerging technologies. And that work has produced over 70 publications and more than $10 million in external funding from NSF, the U.S. Department of Education, and the Department of Defense. She earned her PhD in educational technology right here at ASU, so she is a true Sun Devil. And Dr. Kimberly Farnsworth is a research scholar at the William and Ida Friday Institute for Educational Innovation at NC State. Her work is dedicated to closing the gap between cutting-edge educational research and what actually happens in K-12 classrooms, exploring how AI can fuel complex collaborative problem-solving through narrative-centered learning environments. Her current work is part of the Engage AI Institute, centers on helping teachers harness AI and adaptively scaffold student learning. And like Krista, Kim is an ASU alumna and earning her master's in educational technology here before completing her doctorate in instructional systems technology at Indiana University. And she also has ties to our own learning experience designer, Jen Mansfield, as she mentioned, who was Kim's roommate back in college, did you say, I think, or was it when you were teaching? I think it was college,
when we were
right?
teaching, just out of college, yeah.
Just out of college, okay.
Yeah.
So it does not get better than this. Brilliant researchers, dear friends, and fellow Sun Devils, please give a warm welcome for Krista and Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Jean, I just want to just thank you for welcoming us so generously. And I'll just point out as we switch over to our slides, that a lot of the work and ideas that we're going to be talking about were seeded at ASU more than 25 years ago. And so it's a nice full circle moment from that view as well. So as our slides come up, we'll skip introducing us because you've done such a nice job, Jean. But I want to talk a little bit about the Friday Institute and what we do, and then I'm going to switch gears and talk about how this work takes shapes within the context of one of the AI institutes that we're a part of. So the Friday Institute is at NC State's campus. We are outward facing, and our focus is on translational research and how evidence-based practices can reach the classroom or any other learning environments. We work in K-12 most specifically, but we also work in informal environments. We serve youth. Out of this building that you see here, we have 45 full-time staff. We oversee a portfolio of $27 million. And we have more than 70 affiliates and faculty affiliates and grad students that also are associated with the Friday Institute. Now, what you don't see in this picture is that we're also next to a middle school. A public middle school is here on Centennial Campus, and it's with the Wake County Public School System. So us being sited and situated next to a middle school is also important because it's part of the work that we do is direct partnership and engagement with schools. And another key feature that you don't see is a large parking lot with free parking, because a big part of our mission is convening work that we do where we bring together voices and stakeholders around key issues in education. Okay, so next slide. Part of the work that go ahead.
Sorry, I guess I'm still sharing my slides, and I was planning to ask, should I stop sharing?
Oh, okay.
So that I will pass it over to you.
No, you're not. We see her slides.
Oh, perfect, because we have simultaneous. Oh, okay, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. I apologize
awesome.
for the interruption. Yeah, I apologize.
No problem. Now, we're one of the implementation partners for the NSF Institute, AI Institute for Engaged Learning. And this is headquartered at NC State University. It's one of the $20 million AI institutes from the NSF, and 5 of those have focused on education and learning. 4 of those are focused on K-12. The vision for Engage AI is that we are thinking about STEM education through AI-enabled, narrative-centered learning. So I'll talk more about that in a moment. Next slide.
Sorry, takes a minute there. Okay.
The family of AI technologies that are embedded in Engage AI are listed here on the left. And I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but kind of the 3 main areas of focus revolve around AI-enabled narrative-centered learning technology. So this is based on game-based learning. You can see in the center there that kind of immersive image of one of our game-based learning environments. In this context, we're also focused on collaboration through AI-enabled narrative-centered learning. So again, learning through story, learning through narrative, and combining the foundational aspects of learning with AI capabilities. And then finally, multimodal learning analytics through narrative-centered learning. Now, that's all I'm going to say for now, because we want to really be able to jump to pretty quickly here are some of the examples. So if you'll just hold in your mind that narrative-centered learning is at the center, and there's a number of AI technologies that support that. Now, as I've already mentioned, NC State University is the lead partner for Engage AI, and this comes out of work with James Lester, if he's familiar to any of you. The other universities and partners are UNC, Indiana University, Vanderbilt University, Digital Promise, so go Hoosiers, go Carolina, if you're associated with any of those organizations. And like I said, the Friday Institute is one of the implementation partners for Engage AI. And it would not be possible to acknowledge all of the folks that work in Engage AI. So here are the faces here, and we'll move on. What we want to focus today in talking about is how the AI ecosystem can really center human agency at the middle. And Kim and I today are going to talk about learners, teachers, and researchers at the center of how we think about AI and the supportive technologies of AI to realize some of the benefits when it might come to the learning outcomes and goals that we might have in the classroom and in informal learning environments. So hold in your mind now, teachers, learners, and researchers, we're centering their agency, and we're going to talk about how each of these take shape across some of the projects that come out of Engage AI. 3 terms that we want to also, now I'm asking you to hold a lot of things in your mind. So here's 3 more things. Intelligence augmentation, which we're referencing AI designs to support human reflection, human judgment, human decision-making. So in other words, we want to be able to scale some of these things, and we can do that possibly with intelligence augmentation. It's also critical to think about human in the loop, teacher in the loop, student in the loop kinds of designs where humans retain the interpretive control, decision-making, and responsibility for activity and actions. And what we're aiming for here is ambitious learning practices, which we're kind of using this as an umbrella term to reference inquiry-driven collaborative learning or collaborative inquiry where students reason, explain, and make sense together. And so at this intersection, what we're going to talk about today is how some of these ideas are coming together and where AI is being used to foster innovation in this context. Next slide. Supporting learner agency. Kim, this is you, right?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, so hand off to Kim.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be here today and be able to talk a little bit about the specifics of how we are operationalizing what Krista just shared. So we're gonna, there's really three angles that we're looking at, or three, I guess, participants in this agency, focusing on how we can promote agency for learners, for teachers, and researchers when using AI, but also just in general when using technology and other intelligent systems. So one of the projects that we are doing with Engage AI Institute is called Eco Journeys. And you can see here in this animation, this is a game-based learning environment, and this is a visual from it. So the students, as they go through this game, they're working collaboratively, and they're also, you can see in a, embedded in what we, as Krista pointed out, a narrative-centered learning environment. So it's embedded in a story. And you can see on the slide here, a little blip from, kind of describing that the students arrive on an island in the Philippines, and they're there to help local fish farmers solve a mystery about why the tilapia are getting sick, the tilapia fish. So that's the context that creates a rich narrative-centered environment. Where we are implementing this, doing our studies with Eco Journey is we're implementing in middle school classrooms, generally science classrooms. We've had a little bit of sometimes of other STEM-based classrooms, but students work in collaborative groups of 3 or 4. And it does a full implementation where you go through 4 quests in the game. It takes about 9 to 11 days. So it is, there's a lot of planning and a lot of collaboration involved just in preparing to do an implementation. And we work very, very closely with teachers. And even in the development of Eco Journeys, it's been iterative over several years, and we've worked collaborating with teachers in the development of Eco Journeys. And so, yes, we're focused on scientific inquiry, and in this case, that question of why are the tilapia getting sick? So now looking at how are we then promoting agency for learners and teachers? So we start out with just a typical classroom, right? You've got a teacher. The teacher is providing all the support and the scaffolding for the students in their classroom. With Eco Journeys, you think about, okay, how can we leverage the technology that we're integrating into classrooms, and in this case, AI, artificial intelligence, how are we going to use that to help not only create more support for learners and teachers as well as they go through the problem-solving process, but also creating actual learning environments. So you can see that as the learners are going through their collaborative problem solving, the game is also then providing them with adaptive scaffolding. So the students, as they're engaging with Eco Journeys, there's multimodal data streams going out to the game and essentially to the intelligent system. And the intelligent system is then providing not just the environment, but also narratives and directives from the narrative. So basically guiding learners through the process. And then all of the actions that are taken in the game including the chats. So this is one of the big components, is that as the learners are working collaboratively, they're also chatting together, and they have to come up with solutions together and have a consensus. And all of that is being fed into this intelligent system. So this graphic here represents the whole intelligent system, but really it's a component of several different pieces and ways that we are using artificial intelligence to support and scaffold learners, as well as in a minute you'll see the teachers. So you can see here there's dialogue analysis for the collaborative dialogue, argumentation analysis for the solutions that students are coming up with. We have narrative planning, where the AI is determining how the narrative should be adapted to support students. There's conversational agents also. And then there is adaptive scaffolding. So, and this really allows the teacher to not be the only one. If you look back to the classroom, when we started out, the teacher is the one providing all the support, all the resources. This allows the teacher to focus in a different way in the classroom on the learning. And that's what's so powerful about this kind of a model, is that the AI is able to provide that individual and small group level support, and then the teacher can then go and really look at the finer grain of what needs to happen. It allows them to provide even better and more support, because they basically have that intelligent system supporting them. So one way that the intelligent system is communicating with the teacher and supporting and providing the teacher with agency is through what we call the orchestration assistant. So this is where it's an app that the teachers use on an iPad or tablet, and it provides them with analytics about what's happening in the collaboration and with the learning with the students, as well as providing them with AI generated summaries, which we'll talk about in a moment, are extremely helpful for teachers. So again, just looking at how this whole system scaffolds the learning. We do have fixed scaffolds, and these are tools that are developed not on the fly. So they're not adapting as they go. They are actually tools within the narrative-centered learning environment. We have an app that we call Deduce. This is to foster and help support the collaboration. So you can kind of see a little bit in the screenshot that the students they're given data, they're asked questions, and then as a group, they have to come to a consensus. And this tool allows them to do that. And then once they have come to a consensus with some of the scientific argumentation, they go to the tide board. And this is where they take the data and any information they've collected throughout the game, and then they come up with kind of their final agreed upon answers or solutions. Another fixed scaffold that is in the game are sentence starters. So chat is a huge part of this, because the students are chatting in the game as they collaborate. And these sentence starters just provide them with, if they're having trouble starting to communicate or to move forward. And some of those are auto-generated, so they can actually request sentence starters, and then also the system, the intelligence system, will also provide them with prompts. So looking at the adaptive scaffolding piece in, for instance, the collaborative dialogue analysis. So as the students are chatting, the AI system is looking at their dialogue, and it's determining are there some group members that aren't participating? And so it may provide prompts and say, hey, you need to participate more, or maybe ask questions to draw that student in, or the group, to have them think in a different way. And so then it can provide supports through the chat, but also you can see, it's kind of a little hard to see because it's small, but it has a discussion tip, so the system is guiding and supporting and scaffolding the students as they're going through the problem-solving process. So what are some of the lessons that we've learned from eco-journeys? As I mentioned, we've been, doing research with eco-journeys for several years. We've learned that supports that the whole system can support learners in making their ideas explicit. It also helps the collaborative groups to coordinate their attention and their reasoning, which, in a classroom, anybody that's taught K-12 knows that's a really, really important piece, is getting that attention and focus and helping also with the reasoning. And then it also nudges for the collaboration to be productive, but it's not prescriptive necessarily. We've moved over time. It started out the system a little bit more prescriptive, and we've been able to have it become increasingly adaptive as we've integrated more and more components of the AI system or intelligence system. So now let's talk about a little more in detail about how we are supporting teacher agency with eco-journeys. So teachers who are wanting to use these ambitious learning practices that Krista talked about, that are inquiry driven, that are student focused and student centered, using eco journeys, we also want to help the teachers to foster that kind of collaborative environment. So one of the orchestration tools, or the orchestration assistant, we refer to it as the OA, so I may use that terminology. The OA really gives us a way to think about how can we augment human intelligence and also support human agency. So this goes back to that idea of keeping the human in the loop. So the orchestration assistant, you'll see just a couple screenshots here kind of at the bottom of the screen. What we found in our research is that the teachers are using the orchestration assistant at 3 different stages in different ways. So before class, they're able to use some of the summaries that the AI creates and provides through the orchestration assistant to the teachers of what happened in the previous class, and also some tips for what they might do in the next class to support their students. During the class, this is what has been very interesting in the research, is the teachers getting prompts through the OA throughout class. And some of what we found is, and we'll talk a little more in a minute about the specifics, but the teachers use these prompts and alerts in different ways. Some of them they might ignore, and it's not necessarily the same across teachers, right? Every teacher has their style. So some of the alerts they might ignore, some of them they might react to within the OA. They can actually communicate with the students through the system, or they might go in person and adapt. Sometimes the teachers are using it just to check for pacing. So you can see on this left image here that this is looking more at the chats, and the OA will provide the teacher with alerts about what's going on in the chats. And yes, there are alerts even about whether they're staying on task, or even if something maybe is not appropriate. But it provides also level of engagement information in the chat. So that is being provided. They're also getting alerts about the pacing, which is kind of this middle image here. And then they're being told about individual progress or what may be going on. For instance, maybe there's a video issue or a video that wasn't watched. So these are some of the alerts. There's quite a few more. And again, the teacher is then determining, okay, how am I going to use this information? Am I going to pay attention to it or not? It sounds, and I will say, one of the things that we found is that over time, meaning from the beginning of an implementation, as we go through over 1 to 2 weeks, they change how they use it. And I'll talk more about that in just a minute. And then after class, they are provided with summaries. And you can see on the right here, this is an AI generated summary. It's a narrative summary that the teachers have really, really loved. This is a newer feature, and we've just had a lot of positive reaction from the teachers. And we also have found that they use that a lot after class and before class. So kind of in that space between classes, they're using these summaries to determine, oh, I might want to change the way I'm approaching this, or maybe I need to get this group more involved, depending on what the summary says. So again, we've looked through kind of this whole process here. And the part where they're getting these summaries is this right here where it indicates. So they're getting summaries during classroom implementation, but they're also getting that narrative summary after class or at the end of the gameplay each day. And so this provides them with the information to adapt as they move forward. So again, I talked a little bit already about this. What are some of the findings? So we have found that teachers' reliance on the alerts changes over time. So they do in the beginning, we find, focus very heavily on the pacing. A lot of times teachers get really concerned, is everybody keeping up? Is everybody moving through the game? You know, they have to get things done within a certain amount of time. And so I'm sure everybody here who teaches is familiar with that. And so, but then as they move forward over time, you know, they start to personalize a little more how they are using some of these alerts and how they prioritize them. So it's been very interesting to see that, and also to hear the teachers talk about how the OA has helped them to basically provide richer scaffolding to their students. All right, Krista, we are back to you.
So now the question, will this scale? And in particular, I think this is an important question because, as you know, all of the models that are running many of the technologies that we talk about are based on having high quality data. So it took us a long time to get to this point. Can we scale this technology? And the short answer to this question is actually no. You can click ahead. The reason that EcoJourneys itself won't scale is because there's a few limiting conditions and factors associated with this. The first is that EcoJourneys is a long implementation. So to ask teachers to take anywhere from like 9 to 11 classroom periods or classroom days out of their schedule, that has to be worth their while. And the other reason that EcoJourneys can't scale is that it's highly specified content. So unless you're teaching middle school eco-science or biology, this is not going to be something that you'll have an interest in teaching. So when we, as in Engage AI, as we've talked about scale and the context of scale, we quickly arrived at the knowledge that we would need a different product to be able to scale. And so that's where now I'm going to talk about SceneCraft. SceneCraft is a teacher authoring tool or platform. So if you imagine what we just looked at with EcoJourneys, and it's a narrative-centered learning environment in this immersive 3D world, we have built a teacher authoring tool to give some of those same functionalities and put those in the hands of teachers. In short, what this looks like is in the platform is an authoring window. Teachers enter a prompt. The more detail that teachers enter at the outset, the more that the system will generate a story close to what they're imagining. So teachers can enter things like their content standards, a context. They can enter learning goals. They can enter their learning objectives. It can be as short as one sentence or as long as a paragraph. The system built on LLM and the graphics and the assets that we have in the system will generate a narrative-centered, playable environment for students to use. So at every stage, and I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but the system first generates the overview of the story. The teacher can change that or add specification at that stage. And then the system generates dialogue. So it generates scenes and dialogue for the teachers to, again, teacher in the loop here, make changes, add terms, add context. Teachers can add scaffolding. And what ultimately gets generated at the end of the design session is a playable learning-centered environment and a link, and teachers then use that link, send it to students however she wants to send it, and then the students can play the game. Next slide. Now, what I'll say about SceneCraft and one of the limitations so far, if EcoJourneys is 9 to 11 class periods, one of the comparisons, SceneCraft generates only about 20 to 30 minutes of narrative-centered environment. So it's much shorter in duration. If teachers want to kind of use this for more than one day in a row, they have to kind of generate a scene for every day and then stack scenes together. The main uses this is for is either to kind of use as a hook or context for case or inquiry-based learning, or to add stakes to context or an environment, or to kind of use it as a culminating activity at the end. So a good example would be if a teacher wants to surface that there might be multiple ways to look at something or multiple perspectives on a topic. This could be easily done in SceneCraft. So that as the player, you go from place to place to learn about how people in a certain place might view their responsibility or might have a position on something. So that kind of gives you a little sense of what SceneCraft can do. So SceneCraft is currently our platform that we are using for scale, and we are aiming to reach 20,000 students by October with SceneCraft. So next slide. And then finally, the final technology that I'll talk about is how we are supporting researcher agency within Engage AI. Next slide. So in the context of the work that we've been doing, we also have hours and hours of classroom video taken from EcoJourneys and others of our products that we have built out of Engage AI. One of the things that we would like to be able to do is to take the video that we have and engage in researcher work where we can query the video using natural language prompts. So you'll see in the middle here what we're aiming for, where someone might be wondering from this library video, who was participating, how did the teacher guide students? And what we're aiming for are relevant moments that can be identified by AI to support researcher query and researcher engagement with the data that we already have. Next slide. And so I'm just going to talk very briefly about what this looks like. The kinds of things that we can query our video from. So we can specify timestamps, and then we can ask a natural language question. What strategies does the teacher use to facilitate the group? Or what facilitation moves does the teacher use? So you see that here on the slide. Another thing we can query is instruction level. And so in the beginning, does the teacher provide the whole class or small group facilitation? And then finally, pedagogical purpose is the next one. So from 2 minute 27 seconds in to 3:16, why does the group require facilitation? And then finally, timing of facilitation. When does the teacher provide facilitation? So next slide. What this looks like in practice is this is the interface that we can see. And then let's click ahead once so that we can. So I just kind of excerpted out what the text looks like here so that we can, it's for readability. So here's the timestamp from 2003. The teacher provides a combination of questioning, explaining procedural management, and encouraging collaboration facilitation moves. So this is what the system is telling us when we ask about facilitation. So questioning here, explaining procedural management, and encouraging collaboration. So this is the result of being able to query the video with natural language queries. So in this way, what we're really aiming for are the kinds of things that researchers can more easily do and accomplish instead of having to hand code hours and hours and hours of video, which we would never be able to do. So it's funny that at the start of this talk, we kind of harkened back to some of our 20 plus years of engagement together with Jean and with Jen. And 20 years ago, Roy P. was imagining many similar things. And so a lot of our technologies are built on this idea of a mixed initiative design. And this has been in our imagination from not actually more than 20 years ago when Roy P. was talking about this mixed initiative design. He was referencing Carbonell from 1970. And so what we are imagining is kind of at the possibility and potential of artificial intelligence that can foster learning. We're really thinking about this as a partnership or a synergy that can be achieved. And all of this placing the learner at the center here. Next slide. So where are we going, or where did we think this work is going? We really need to think about theory-driven work, but also theory-driven as a driver toward better theories. So as we're trying to understand human learning in this context, we're able to now instrument in ways that we couldn't always instrument. We're able to detect the kinds of learning that we before couldn't detect. We're able to provide different forms of assistance at a moment of need that learners can have at their fingertips and in response to in much faster response rates. But we also need better theories to help inform what these designs could be in the future. And we also need better theories to really consider what we're doing for all learners in these contexts. Next slide. So kind of where we started was to ask the question about multi-interest partnerships and centering human agency. So the final point that I think we want to make in this context really centers on keeping the learner at the center, thinking about human judgment and decision-making all along the way, thinking about the kinds of things that can scale in this context, but the kinds of things that we don't want to leave behind. And that really relates to human judgment, human decision-making, and human agency. Next slide. And that's the end of our talk. So we've left enough time for questions. We're happy to take any questions that you might have. And we don't have any demos pulled up, but we can quickly pull up demos too if folks would like to see what the technologies look like in practice.